The envelope sat on my kitchen table for 3 days before I opened it. Plain white return address from a lab I'd never heard of, in a suburb I'd never visited. My daughter Kira's name was typed on the label, care of my address, which told me she'd been expecting this and hadn't wanted it delivered to the apartment she shared with her fiancé, Jason. Smart girl. She knew whatever was inside that envelope had the power to detonate, and she wanted the blast radius contained to my kitchen, not her living room. I'm Denise Mitchell. I'm 53 years old, a high school biology teacher with 2 grown daughters and 1 dead husband. It's been gone for 8 years, but still gets the last word in family arguments because Dad would have wanted as a trump card that never expires. I raised my girls alone after Marcus died in a car accident that rearranged our lives so completely. I still sometimes walk into a room expecting to see him and feel surprised when the space is empty, Kira. My oldest at 26 was getting married in 4 months. Jason seemed like a good man, quiet, steady. The kind who remembers your coffee order and doesn't make you ask twice for help moving furniture. They'd been together 3 years, living together for 1, and when he proposed on her birthday with a ring that looked like he'd actually listened to her Pinterest board, I cried the good kind of tears. The ones that mean your child is building a life that doesn't require your constant intervention. But then I met Jason's mother. Diane Richardson was everything I'm not polished. Wealthy, the kind of woman who wears jewelry to the grocery store and makes it look casual. She had that particular confidence that comes from never having worried about money, never having worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on, never having chosen between new shoes for your kid or gas in the tank. When she shook my hand at the engagement party, her grip was firm and brief, the handshake of someone completing a transaction rather than building a relationship. You must be so proud, she said, her smile professional. I am, I replied. Jason tells me you're a teacher. Biology, was it? High school biology. 22 years. How noble, she said, in a tone that made noble sound like a synonym for quaint. The first few months of wedding planning were fine. Kira and Jason wanted something mid-sized, elegant, but not ostentatious. Diane kept suggesting small additions that ballooned the budget-upgraded linens, a string quartet instead of a DJ, a photographer whose portfolio I recognized from magazine spreads. Jason would look uncomfortable during these suggestions. Kira would politely redirect. And Diane would smile that tight smile that said, I'm being gracious, but you're testing my patience. 3 months before the wedding, Diane invited me to lunch. Just the 2 of us, she said. To get to know each other better, she chose a restaurant downtown that required valet parking and had prices that weren't listed on the menu, which is always a bad sign. We made small talk through the appetizer. She asked about my teaching. I asked about her charity work. We orbited around real conversation, like 2 satellites programmed to never collide. Then, as the waiter cleared our plates, Diane leaned forward and said, Denise, I need to ask you something delicate. My stomach tightened. Okay. It's about Kira's father. Marcus. Yes. Jason mentioned he passed away when Kira was in high school. I'm very sorry for your loss. She paused, her fingers tracing the stem of her water glass. But I couldn't help but notice that Kira doesn't look much like you, or like the photos Jason showed me of Marcus. I felt my face go hot. What are you saying? I'm saying, Diane continued, her voice calm and clinical, that in my family, we value transparency. We value knowing exactly who we're welcoming into our bloodline. And before my son legally binds himself to your daughter, I'd like to ensure that there are no surprises. Surprises. I'd like Kira to take a DNA test to confirm paternity. The restaurant noise-clinking silverware, muted conversation, the hiss of the espresso machine faded to white noise. I stared at Diane, trying to process what I'd just heard. You want my daughter to prove she's her father's child? I want certainty, Diane said. Surely you can understand that. If you're a biology teacher, you know how genetics work. You know how easily mistakes happen. Mistakes, affairs, misattributed paternity. It's more common than people admit, and I will not have my son raising another man's. Stop talking. My voice came out low and dangerous. The voice I use when a classroom has gone too far and needs to remember I'm in charge. Stop talking right now. Diane blinked, surprised. My daughter is my husband's child. I don't need a test to tell me that. And the fact that you would suggest otherwise, that you would insult my marriage, my fidelity, my daughter's legitimacy. I stood up, my chair scraping loud enough that nearby tables turned. I'm leaving. And if you want any relationship with Kira going forward, you will never bring this up again. I walked out. Diane paid the check, I assume. I drove home shaking so hard I had to pull over twice. When I told Kira what Diane had said, she cried. Not the loud, dramatic crying of teenage heartbreak, but the silent, shaking kind that means something fundamental has been broken. Mom, I'm so sorry, she whispered. You have nothing to apologize for. I need to tell Jason. You do. Jason came over that night. His face was pale, his jaw tight. My mother told me about lunch, he said. I'm horrified. I told her she was out of line. I told her she needs to apologize, did she? She said she was just being protective, that any responsible parent would do the same. I laughed, bitter. Any responsible parent would trust their child's judgment and not accuse their future daughter-in-law's mother of infidelity. Jason rubbed his face. I know. I'm sorry. I told her if she ever brings this up again, she's not invited to the wedding. Kira took his hand. Jason, I don't want to be the reason you fight with your mother. You're not, he said firmly. She is. 2 weeks passed. Diane sent a formal apology via email, 2 sentences. No real contrition. Just, I'm sorry if my words were hurtful. I only want what's best for Jason. I didn't respond. Then the envelope arrived. I called Kira. There's a DNA test kit at my house addressed to you. Silence. Then, she didn't. She did. I'm coming over. Kira arrived 30 minutes later, her face a mask of fury and hurt. She picked up the envelope, read the label, and laughed once, sharp and ugly. She sent it to your house so Jason wouldn't see it. Probably she's still pushing this. After everything. I sat down, suddenly exhausted. Kira, I need to tell you something. She looked at me, and something in my voice made her sit too. Your father and I had problems, I began. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would interest a therapist. Just the normal erosion that happens when you're young and broke and tired. We fought about money, about whose turn it was to get up with you at 3 a.m., about whether we were living the lives we'd imagined. Mom, I know. All couples fight. Let me finish. I took a breath. The year before you were born, we almost separated. We'd been married 5 years, and I thought we'd made a mistake. He thought I was restless, that I wanted something he couldn't give me. We went to counseling. It didn't help. And then I found out I was pregnant with you, and we decided to try again. Kira's face was unreadable. Okay, I'm telling you this because Diane's accusation is ugly, and it's offensive, but it's not entirely baseless. Not because I cheated. I didn't. But because there was a time when someone could have looked at our marriage and wondered, Mom, where are you going with this? I reached across the table and took her hand. I'm saying that if you want to take the test, I'll support you. Not because I think you need to prove anything, but because maybe having the scientific certainty will shut Diane up and let you move forward. You want me to take the test? I want you to have the option. Without guilt, Kira stared at the envelope. Then she picked it up, tore it open, and pulled out the kit to cheek swabs. Instructions. A prepaid return envelope. If I do this, she said slowly, I'm not doing it for Diane. I'm doing it so I can show her the results and tell her to go to hell. That's fair. She swabbed her cheek right there at my kitchen table, sealed it in the tube, filled out the form. I need your sample too, she said. For comparison, mine. The test compares my DNA to yours to determine if Marcus is my biological father. It's how these things work. Of course, biology teacher. Should have known. Swabbed my own cheek, sealed it, and watched Kira put everything in the return envelope. She walked it to the mailbox on the corner. When she came back, she said, "Results in 2 weeks. Are you okay?" "No," she said honestly, "but I will be." After Diane sees the results and realizes she's been insulting us for nothing, those 2 weeks were strange. Jason was apologetic and attentive, bringing Kira flowers and cooking her dinner, and generally trying to make up for his mother's behavior. Diane was silent, which was somehow worse than her interference. And I kept teaching, kept grading papers, kept explaining Punnett squares to teenagers who thought genetics was abstract until suddenly it wasn't. The results came on a Thursday. Same plain white envelope, same lab. This time addressed to both Kira and me. She was at work, so I called her. "It's here. I'm coming over." "Should we wait for Jason?" "No. This is between us and Diane. He can see it after." She arrived 20 minutes later. We sat at the same kitchen table where we'd swabbed our cheeks. I held the envelope, suddenly terrified in a way I couldn't name. "Mom, it's fine. We know what it's going to say, right? Of course." I opened it, pulled out the pages dense with numbers, percentages, terminology. I scanned for the summary, the part written for Le People, and then I read it again and again. "Mom, what does it say?" I couldn't speak. I handed her the paper. She read it. Her face went white. "This has to be a mistake." The summary was clear, based on genetic markers. Kira Mitchell and Denise Mitchell share 50% of their DNA, consistent with a biological mother-daughter relationship. However, comparison with the paternal sample provided stored genetic profile of Marcus Mitchell. Deceased shows a 0% match. Marcus Mitchell is excluded as the biological father of Kira Mitchell with 99.9% certainty. "Mom," Kira's voice was shaking. "This is wrong. The lab made a mistake." Couldn't breathe. The room tilted. Because deep in the part of my brain that's been teaching genetics for 22 years, I knew the lab hadn't made a mistake. Labs make mistakes, sure, but not this kind. Not a 0% match. Not with this level of certainty. "Mom, say something." I looked at my daughter, her face, her eyes, the curve of her jaw. She didn't look like me. She'd never looked like me. Everyone always said she had Marcus's smile, Marcus's height, Marcus's way of tilting her head when she was thinking. But now I was looking at her with new eyes, forensic eyes, and I was seeing things I'd trained myself not to see. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Call the lab. Tell them they mixed up samples. Tell them to retest. Kira, Mom, I'm Dad's daughter. I know I am. I remember him. I remember everything. He taught me to ride a bike. He came to my recitals. He cried at my graduation. He's my father." "I know," I said. Even though the paper in her shaking hands said otherwise, she called Jason, told him to come over immediately. That something was wrong. He arrived 15 minutes later, took one look at our faces, and said, "What happened?" Kira handed him the paper. He read it. "Read it again." Looked at me. "Is this accurate?" "I don't know," I said. "I don't understand how this is possible." "Could the lab have made a mistake?" Jason asked, his voice careful. "Maybe," I said. "But these companies test multiple markers. A false negative is extremely unlikely." "What about the paternal sample? How did they get Marcus's DNA if he's been dead for 8 years? I'd been wondering the same thing. I pulled out my phone and called the lab. Got transferred 3 times before reaching someone who could access our file. "Ms. Mitchell," the technician said, "we used the genetic profile on file with the National Donor Registry. Your late husband was a registered organ donor. His tissue samples are maintained in a database for potential familial matches." "So you're certain the sample is Marcus Mitchell's? The ID numbers match the records from the hospital where he was processed after his death. We're very careful about chain of custody." I thanked her and hung up. Looked at Kira and Jason. "It's his DNA." Kira started crying. Not the silent kind this time. The loud, breaking kind. Jason held her while she sobbed into his chest. and I sat at my kitchen table trying to solve an equation that didn't add up. Marcus was Kira's father. I knew he was. I'd been faithful. I'd never even been tempted. Our marriage had problems, but infidelity wasn't one of them. So how could a DNA test say he wasn't her biological father? Unless Marcus wasn't Marcus? The thought was absurd. Insane. The kind of thing that happens in soap operas, not in real life. But I'm a scientist. And when the data doesn't match your hypothesis, you revise the hypothesis. I pulled out my laptop and started searching. Switched identities. Hospital mix-ups. Babies swapped at birth. It happens more than people think. One case for every 1,000 births, some studies estimate. But Marcus wasn't swapped at birth. He was an adult man with a birth certificate, a social security number, a life mom. Kira had stopped crying and was watching me. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we need to talk to your grandmother." Casa's mother, Gloria, was 78 and lived in a nursing home 40 minutes away. She had moderate dementia, the kind where some days she knew exactly who you were and other days she called you by her sister's name. I hadn't visited in months, which made me feel guilty in the way adult children of aging parents always feel guilty. We drove there the next morning, me, Kira, and Jason. Gloria was having a good day. She recognized us immediately, hugged Kira, and asked why we didn't visit more often. "Grandma," Kira said gently, "we need to ask you something about Dad, Marcus." "Oh, I miss my boy. He was such a good son." "Oh. Grandma, do you remember when Dad was born?" Gloria smiled. "Of course. May 15th, 1967, St. Mary's Hospital. He was 8 pounds, 6 ounces. I was in labor for 14 hours. Your grandfather said I was the bravest woman he'd ever seen." She laughed. "He was biased. Do you remember bringing him home from the hospital?" I asked. "Oh, yes. We had a little yellow nursery already. Your grandfather had painted clouds on the ceiling. I remember Marcus looking up at them and trying to grab them with his tiny hands. Her face went soft with memory." "Grandma," Kira said, "did anything unusual happen at the hospital? Anything strange?" Gloria's face changed. The soft nostalgia hardened into something else. "Why are you asking?" "It's important," I said. "Please, Gloria, we need to know." She looked at each of us, and I saw the sharpness return to her eyes. The clarity that dementia sometimes steals and sometimes allows back for brief, lucid moments. "He told me never to talk about it," she said quietly. "Who? Marcus?" "No, his father, Robert." She twisted her hands in her lap. "He said it didn't matter, that Marcus was our son no matter what." My heart started pounding. "No matter what, Gloria?" She was quiet for a long time. Then, the day we brought Marcus home, a woman came to our house. She was crying. She said there'd been a mistake at the hospital, that the babies had been switched. The room went cold. She said she'd taken home our biological son, and we'd taken home hers. She had proof a hospital bracelet that didn't match records that had been altered. She begged us to switch back. "But Robert," Gloria's voice broke. "Robert said no. He said we'd already bonded with the baby we had. He said switching them back would be cruel. He said we'd keep Marcus, and she should keep our biological son. And no one ever needed to know." "Oh my God," Kira whispered. "I'm sorry," Gloria said, tears streaming down her face. "I should have told someone. But Robert said if we did, they'd take Marcus away. And I couldn't. I'd already fallen in love with him. He was mine. DNA didn't matter. He was mine." We sat in stunned silence. Finally, Jason asked, "This other woman, do you remember her name?" Gloria shook her head. "Robert made me promise never to contact her. He said it was better for everyone if we just moved forward." "Did Marcus know?" I asked. "No. We never told him. Robert died thinking we'd done the right thing. And Marcus?" She looked at me with such sadness. "He was a good man, Denise. He was a good husband, a good father. Does it matter that his DNA came from someone else?" "It matters to Kira," I said quietly, "because now she doesn't know who her biological grandfather is." We left the nursing home in silence. In the car, Kira finally spoke. Dad wasn't who we thought he was. He was exactly who we thought he was, I corrected. He just came from different genetics than we believed. But my biological grandfather, Marcus's biological father, I don't even know his name. We'll find out, Jason said. If you want to know, we'll find out. The next part took weeks. We hired a private investigator specializing in adoption and paternity cases. We combed through hospital records from St. Mary's in 1967. We found the names of all male infants born that week. We cross-referenced with current records, death certificates, living relatives, and we found him. Christopher Allen Richardson. Born May 16, 1967, one day after Marcus. Raised by a single mother, Angela Richardson, in a different part of the city. Christopher had died young, only 36, from a heart attack. But he'd had a wife and a son, Jason Christopher Richardson, age 29, engaged to my daughter. When I realized what we'd discovered, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The man my daughter was going to marry was her biological cousin, her father's biological brother's son. We'd been looking for Kira's grandfather. We'd found her fiance's father, which meant Diane, the woman who demanded the DNA test to ensure her son wasn't marrying. Beneath his station was the mother of the man who was actually Marcus's biological nephew. Her husband, Christopher, was the baby who'd been switched at birth. I showed Kira and Jason the investigator's report. Watched their faces as they processed what it meant. We're cousins, Kira whispered. First cousins, Jason confirmed, his voice hollow. Your dad and my dad were biological brothers. Diane doesn't know, I said. Christopher died before Gloria told anyone. Diane has no idea her husband was switched at birth. Do we tell her? Kira asked. She demanded this test, Jason said, his voice rising. She insisted on knowing the truth about genetics, about bloodlines, about family trees. Well, here's the truth. Her crusade just revealed that I'm engaged to my own cousin. We can't get married, Kira said, and started crying again. We're related. It's illegal in this state, even if it weren't. It's exactly what my mother was so afraid of, Jason said bitterly. She wanted to make sure you were good enough for the Richardson bloodline. Turns out, you're literally Richardson blood. We decided to tell Diane in person. All of us, me, Kira, Jason, and the investigator's report. We met at her house, the same pristine mansion where I'd felt so out of place at the engagement party. Diane greeted us with that professional smile. I wasn't expecting all of you. Is this about the wedding? You've decided on the upgraded champagne? Mom, Jason said we need to show you something. We sat in her formal living room on furniture too expensive to feel comfortable. Jason handed her the DNA test results first. She read them. Her face went pale. I don't understand. Marcus isn't Kira's father. Keep reading, I said. Jason handed her the investigator's report, the hospital records, the birth certificates, the family tree we'd constructed. And finally, the truth. Christopher Allen Richardson, her late husband, was the biological brother of Marcus Mitchell. My late husband, Diane read everything twice. When she looked up, her face was ash. This is impossible. It's genetic fact, I said, and I didn't keep the satisfaction out of my voice. You wanted DNA testing? You wanted proof of bloodlines? Congratulations. You proved that your son and my daughter share a grandfather. But that means, she looked at Jason, then at Kira. You can't marry. No, Jason said quietly. We can't. Diane stood up, pacing. This is your fault, she said, pointing at me. You insisted on this test. You pushed for it. You demanded it. I corrected. You questioned my daughter's legitimacy. You questioned my fidelity. You wanted certainty. This is certainty. My husband, Diane whispered. Christopher never knew. His mother never told him. She thought it would be cruel. He lived his whole life not knowing he was adopted. Knowing his real family. He knew his real family, I said. He was raised by a woman who loved him. The genetics didn't matter to Angela Richardson. They shouldn't have mattered to you. Diane sank back into her chair. The wedding is off. Yes, Kira said, and her voice broke. Jason took Kira's hand. I love you, he said, but we can't do this. Not ethically. Not legally. Not knowing what we know. They broke up that night. Not dramatically, not with anger or blame. Just with a quiet grief of two people who loved each other and couldn't be together because of genetics they didn't choose. The next weeks were brutal. Kira moved back in with me, temporarily. Jason moved in with a friend. Kay went silent. No apologies, no contact, just silence. The wedding was canceled. Deposits were lost. Invitations were unsent. Family members. We're told circumstances changed because how do you explain that at DNA? Tests meant to prove legitimacy accidentally revealed a family secret that destroyed two families. Gloria passed away 3 months later. Dementia finally took the last of her clarity. At her funeral, I told Kira she loved your dad. She loved him so much she lied to protect him. That's not nothing. But the lie destroyed my future, Kira said. No, I corrected. Diane's demand for genetic purity destroyed your future. Gloria's lie just let Marcus live his life without shame. A year has passed. Kira is dating someone new, a man named David, who knows the whole story and loves her anyway. They're taking it slow, learning each other without the pressure of wedding timelines or family expectations. Jason moved to another city. I heard he's doing well, working for a tech company, rebuilding his life away from his mother. Diane sold Christopher's childhood home and moved to Florida. I heard she's active in a genealogy society, which would be funny if it weren't tragic. And me, I still teach biology. But now when I talk about genetics, about inheritance, about how traits pass from one generation to the next, I tell my students something I didn't used to emphasize. Genetics matter, but they're not the whole story. Family is the people who raise you, who love you, who show up when you need them. DNA is just data. It can tell you where you came from, but it can't tell you who you are. My daughter didn't marry her fiancé because a DNA test revealed they were cousins. But more than that, she didn't marry him because his mother's demand for genetic purity accidentally revealed that bloodlines are messy, that families are complicated, and that sometimes the truth you insist on finding is the truth that destroys you. Diane wanted to ensure her son wasn't marrying beneath his station. What she proved instead was that her obsession with genetics had blinded her to the fact that real families built on love. Not chromosomes, the results destroyed to families. Not because of what they revealed about Kira, but because of what they revealed about all of us, that we're all carrying secrets we don't know. Living lives built on assumptions that might be wrong, and that sometimes the cruelest thing you can do is demand absolute truth when mercy would serve everyone better. I think about Gloria sometimes, the woman who chose love over genetics, who lied to protect her son from the shame of being switched. I used to think she was wrong. Now I think she understood something Diane never did. That being someone's parent, someone's family, isn't about DNA matching percentages. It's about showing up, loving hard, and accepting that sometimes the story you tell yourself about who you are matters more than the story. Written in your genes. Kira will be okay. She's stronger than she knows, more resilient than I could have hoped. She knows who her father was, the man who taught her to ride a bike, who came to her recitals, who loved her unconditionally. The DNA test didn't change that. It just changed the story we thought we knew about where Marcus came from. And maybe that's the real lesson, that the stories we inherit matter less than the stories we choose to tell. That genetics can surprise you, but love is the only thing that actually builds a family. And that sometimes the person demanding proof of purity is the one who most needs to learn that purity is a lie we tell ourselves to feel superior. Diane got her DNA test. She got her certainty, and it cost her a son, a daughter-in-law, and any chance at redemption. Meanwhile, I got something more valuable: the knowledge that my daughter's capacity for love, isn't determined by which branch of which family tree she grew from. And that, in the end, is the only genetic inheritance that matters.